Hey, Sens fans. Tonight we're excited to welcome to the show Greg from the Grindline podcast, a Detroit Red Wings themed podcast. So, Greg, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, guys, no problem. Glad to be on. Talk about the trade and DeBrincat and Dominique Kubalik.
Yeah, for sure.
Wicked. And I gotta ask, how do you guys come up with Grindline podcast?
So initially we were the winged octopus a long time ago. We've been
Nice.
doing this. We've been doing this for I think we're on year 6 or 7 now. So we've been
Okay.
around for a while. And I'm going and I was initially brought on to just do like the production, do the intros, do the topic switches, and then like format the show and edit it
Yeah.
and put it out. That's what I was initially brought on to do. And I ended up getting a bigger role and getting a speaker role, and a couple people dropped out. And I'm like the main host, and now I edit and do all that stuff. So I'm like, we
Okay.
need a brand change. I didn't like Winged Octopus. I'm like, I do graphic design and all that fun stuff. So I'm like, I think Grindline, it's a good name for it. I mean, very well known in Detroit and really around the NHL, the grind line. So
Mhm.
I thought it was good. And we're more of like an unfiltered type show. We don't keep ourselves PG. We do the PG-13 kind of
Yeah.
route.
You
So,
get the one
uh,
F word.
yeah, well, in the first 5 minutes, but we also got the blessing of Darren McCarty, so that was really cool. He's like, you guys
Yeah,
can use the name, and we've talked to him a couple times, and we keep up with him on Twitter, and whenever we go down to the arena we talk to him. So
That's
that's
pretty
that's
kind of
cool.
how the
really
name came
cool.
about. Yeah, it's really cool.
And then I guess you guys have just been Red Wings fans all your life.
Yeah, Tyler's in the Boston area, but he's always been a Wings fan. He hates the Bruins, so huge Bruin hater, as
Yeah,
is
as
most
you
of
should.
everyone else. um, Ryan, same thing. Ryan lives in Michigan in the Metro Detroit area, and he's been a Wings fan forever. And I've been a Wings fan since early high school. A few of
Okay.
my friends were into it, and they got me into it, and I like instant hook. Started playing on Xbox, and then just really got into the actual game. So
Yeah, I mean, it's also just objectively a really sick sports logo.
yep.
It's iconic. It resonates with people. And, if you're not really that big into hockey or you're just getting in, sometimes you're just drawn to sick logos. And I can understand that the Red Wings would be one of them.
Like 80% of rappers, right? They all wear the Detroit Red Wings
Yeah, yeah,
jersey
yeah, yeah,
because the logo and colors are like they're iconic, and they're really, I
yeah,
mean, you'll always see them at the top of like the top sports logos in history, and the Red Wings are always
yeah,
towards the top just because it looks really good.
absolutely.
Well, thanks for giving us the background on that.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, I mean, like for me, I obviously followed Datsuk and Zetterberg and the height of their careers. And Datsuk's, got some of the filthiest hands that the NHL has ever seen. So I was always drawn to Detroit just because of like the skill and the fun that they had on the ice. And was cheering for them back in the '08 and '09 finals. So yeah, certainly a team with a lot of history and a lot of fun hockey to look back on. And I can't remember where I was watching a clip of Datsu just dangling through some Nashville players or something online today.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I almost wish that I'd watched more hockey at the time. I kind of got into hockey as his career started to, go downhill. But anyway, all I'm saying is that there may be a lot of animosity on social media between Ottawa and Detroit fans right now, but I do.
Rational fans. We're going to be rational. We're not going to go over the top because there's a lot of irrational people online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so now that we know more about you guys and all that, so let's take a look at the trade here that led us to having this chat. So everyone knows by now, Alex DeBrincat, goes back to his hometown, gets to play for the Detroit Red Wings. Ottawa gets Dominic Kubalik, Donovan Sabrango, a conditional 2024 first and non-conditional 2024 fourth round pick. So, first off, leading up to the trade, there was obviously a lot of discourse that it seemed like he was likely headed to Detroit. And then, reports, oh, the Islanders, Anaheim are jumping in, but it always seemed like Detroit was the front runner. So, what were your thoughts on that? And what were your thoughts when the trade was officially announced?
So it was probably the same thing as you guys. Is is it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Like, it's got to happen, because if Pierre Dorian walked him to free agency, there would have been an uprising. It would have been madness, or at least even walked him to the trade deadline of this season. It probably, you're like, you lower your value the further you go, because after a while, it was pretty obvious that the only team that Alex DeBrincat wanted to extend with was Detroit. So it was really the only offer he was going to get, and you got to kind of take what you're going to get, whether you get flack from the fan base or not, for what you take. So in a way, you can kind of fault him for waiting a while, and on the other hand, you can't fault him for the return because there was only one place. So it started, I think, with Elliot Friedman, and I felt like it was like 3 weeks where they're talking about DeBrincat's getting traded. When's he getting traded? Oh, it's Detroit. Oh, wait, now it's the Islanders. Oh, wait, now maybe it's Dallas or Nashville. And we're all just pulling our hair out waiting for it. And then Yzerman does the press conference after the trade goes down, and Yzerman's like, yeah, well, we talked to the Senators before the draft. And then we talked to them again at the beginning of free agency. And then I talked to DeBrincat's agent for 2 days, and we got it done. So it seems like it wasn't this whole drag out process. It seems like it was a few phone calls in a couple days, and the deal got signed and the trade happened. So, I mean, that's partly just the hockey media people on Twitter, like, trying to just keep stirring it up and making the conversation go over and over. But I mean, it was kind of a sigh of relief. It made Detroit's offseason make a lot more sense, because Yzerman really built out that depth with guys like JT Compher, bringing in Justin Holl, bringing in Shane Gostisbehere, and then getting the scorer, because the one true goal scorer was what we were really lacking. Now we could probably use another one, but I think it really rounds out, DeBrincat really rounds out our roster and gives us that one element that we've been missing for a really long time.
Yeah, and honestly, I think DeBrincat, even though he had a down season with 66 points, like, there were a lot of times where either he whiffed on chances where he would have scored an empty net, or he hit posts or crossbars. You know, a lot of the head going to the rafters, like, can't believe I just missed that. So I genuinely think, like, he could have had a 35 goal season with Ottawa. It's just luck wasn't always on his side. He had a down shooting year. I know some people point to his plus minus and is like, oh, he was a minus 30, whatever. I don't think like that was the biggest issue in the world. I think at the end of the day, he is a great player, and he was playing with a rookie center because Josh Norris got injured at the beginning of the season. And so DeBrincat ended up having to play with Ottawa's rookie third line center, is what he should have been.
Yeah.
So that, I think, was a bit frustrating probably for DeBrincat, I would imagine anyway, because Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, and Claude Giroux they were a god tier line this season. And so there was no way that DJ Smith was going to break them up. And so I think DeBrincat probably was a little frustrated he didn't get to play with Tim Stützle and Claude Giroux, is my guess. But anyway, all that to say, for a smaller player too, he's pretty physical. He had as many hits this season as Travis Hamonic, and on Ottawa, everyone always praises Travis Hamonic for his physicality, if nothing else. So no, I mean, I'm not even trying to pump his tires. I just think that, you know, Detroit cashed in and got fairly good value for a player who wanted to be in Detroit. And yeah, that's really my comments on that for any Detroit fans who watch this. You know, I think that they're going to get a good goal scorer. He can also dish it. He had a career high in assists this season, so that's another thing. I'm not sure who he's going to be penciled in to play with, but
probably Larkin.
Yeah, he'll be he should be hopefully top line with Dylan Larkin, and we're still trying to figure out who's going to play on the other wing. So some people say Lucas Raymond. I think that doesn't really leave you someone who's going to go to the corner and dig out pucks. It could be David Perron. David Perron, really great setup. He'll go into the dirty areas and get the pucks out. His only problem is that he's slow because he's old. Yeah. So I mean, he's still. I mean, the offense is all still there for David Perron, but it's the grit. So it's. I even floated the idea. Maybe you put. We just got Klim Kostin. Maybe you put him up there because Klim Kostin, amazing finisher. His goals per 60 and his finishing are really high. So maybe he goes up there for the muscle, the ability to dig out and make plays. But I think one of the things that Yzerman really pointed out with DeBrincat is he compared him to Håkan Loob and Mats Naslund as not just a scorer. He said he's a better scorer than those two, but he's also a play driver. So I think that's the one thing that a lot of people miss is they're like, well, he only scored 27 goals or whatever. And like you said, he was playing with Batherson and Pinto, and he wasn't playing up on that top line, but he can also drive the play. So I'm wondering how much production of other people dip because he's gone. And I mean, you're going to replace him. I mean, hopefully Norris is back anyways to start the season.
Yeah.
But I think if he's feeding Larkin and Larkin's feeding him, they can both have very, very good seasons because Larkin is a playmaker first, and he's a pretty elite level playmaker.
Yeah, and things that we sort of saw with DeBrincat, obviously, first things first, he's a great shooter, 2-time 40 goal scorer. I think one of the things that definitely frustrated fans last year with DeBrincat is he actually wasn't driving the play that much. And I think it had to do with his line mates, but I think they just expected more, especially considering, the guy is a two-time 40 goal scorer. You expect more from a guy like that. And obviously, if he's playing with Tim Stützle, it's an easy 40. Whereas I think he needs to, so I don't know if it had to do with coaching. There was a lot of issues with DJ Smith this past season. I mean, you can watch every podcast we've done this season and listen to me rant and rave about how terrible of a coach he is.
You're in your Jeff Blashill era, guys. It's
Yeah. Except DJ's been here longer now. So I think that's one of the frustrating things is I'm not sure he was entirely like fired up and driving play. When he did, he did. And it was impressive to watch. And when he took over a game, he would take over a game. So I think if you're able to see that more in Detroit, that's excellent, especially considering he's at home now. Like you want to see that.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I think that's one of the big things too, is maybe he didn't want to be there. Maybe he wanted to be closer to home. And that's, it could be we brought it up on a couple episodes, could be a psychological thing where maybe you play better where you learn to play or where your family is and where you're from and more comfortable.
Yeah. And I think one of the things, and just like my little tidbit on the whole trade situation that went down, I don't blame the guy. If you listen to our last podcast, he's going to be looked on as a villain in Ottawa, and that's okay because, sports is fun when there's heroes and villains. But
like our forever villain, Marian Hossa.
Yeah. I mean, like Hossa was sick.
Yeah, we like him in Ottawa, but
yeah, like we did him pretty derby, so we all have to like him. But I think one of the things is you have to look at it when we're looking at the trade is we got probably the best that we could, considering that we had no leverage whatsoever. As you said, he was gonna, if he didn't walk to free agency, he was gonna be traded at the trade deadline. And so it didn't really make sense. So getting a guy like, Kubalik, who scored 20 goals last year, you get a first round pick, one of which is either Boston's or Detroit's dependent, Dominic Sabrango, and then a fourth. But, we're here to talk about Kubalik, that's
for sure.
So if you can sort of give us some insight on Kubalik's 45 point season last year.
Yeah, dude. I'm telling you, if he would have kept up his first if he would have kept up the pace from the first 25 games through the whole season, I mean, the dude maybe could have hit 40. And that's just, I think, what it is. So Kubi was around 7 draft picks. So immediately when you're in the NHL is around 7 draft pick, like lightning has struck there. He's 27. He's 6'2", 179. He's not afraid to get a little physical either. Like you said, 81 games played, 20 goals, 25 assists for 45 points. And it's in that first kind of section of games, 25 games, that he had 10 goals and 15 assists.
Wow.
If you look at the last 56 games, he had 10 goals and 10 assists. So he scored most of his goals and got most of his points in the first about third of the season. And then he dropped off. And maybe that's line mate. I mean, he had 502 minutes on ice with Dylan Larkin. He had 499 with David Perron. So those are 2 guys who can set up. And what you're getting in Kubi is a dude that can finish. He's a finisher. He's a great goal scorer. He's an absolute sniper. You need someone that can feed him the puck, and someone that can feed him the puck well. Because when it's on his stick, he can pretty much score. And you saw, I mean, if you watched any of the World Tournament, he did that same thing. He was one of the MVPs of the World Tournament for Team Czechia.
Yeah.
And if you play him in the right position with the right playmaker, he's going to score goals, but he's not going to drive your play. He's not an amazing playmaker. If you follow Jay Fresh at all, he's got an EV offensive 46 and an EV defensive 52, but his finishing is 81. His goals per 60 is a 72. And that gives him his overall projected WAR of 70%. So, and he plays within his means. I mean, if you have looked at PDO at all, which is the NHL's their luck score, basically, if you're lucky or unlucky, if 100's the baseline, if you're over 100, you're probably a little lucky and are going to fall back down. If you're under 100, you're unlucky and should come back up. I call it the Philip Zadina effect. But Kubalik played at a 99.3. So he's about where he should be. So I think if he can find the consistent touch and get with a consistent line mate who can feed him the puck, he could go back to that 30-goal season he had his rookie season in Chicago. I don't see any reason he couldn't. It's just getting him the consistency and the right line mate.
Yeah, and I think for Sens fans, as the trade talks were allegedly progressing and Detroit seemed more and more likely, I think a lot of fans wanted Kubalik back because, you know, obviously if you're losing DeBrincat on that left side, you want a new left winger to come in, a guy who's already had NHL experience, ready to go, has a decent track record. You know, Kubalik fits all those boxes. It's kind of nice that he's Czech as well because Ottawa over the beginning of the offseason, they signed Yuri Smejkal, who is a Czech player who played in the SHL this past season. So I think it might be nice for Kubalik and Smejkal to have one another. Hopefully Smejkal makes the NHL roster. I see him doing so. But anyway, I think just having that familiarity also may help. I know it's a really random thing, but I think when you have guys of similar nationality and all that, it can help make that transition to a new club a lot easier. So, but yeah, no, the fact that he was on such a lightning pace at the beginning of the season, it's good that Ottawa could recoup some value. And who knows, maybe he has a nice season next year playing with, if he plays in the top six, he'd play with Norris and Batherson. And Batherson didn't have a great season this year for what people expected, but he was also recovering from a pretty major surgery from an injury he sustained the previous year. What was his name? Buck Arundel. Was it Arundel?
It was Arundel.
It was Arundel. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, can't forgive him for that. But I think Batherson will hopefully be back to his normal self. And with Norris, hopefully, again, also being 100, that'll help if Kubalik plays in the top six. But Ottawa may not be done. There may be a Tarasenko in the future. We'll see about that.
Do you think they're going to play him in the top six? Because I think now that's the other nice thing about him is he can play up and down the lineup as long as you have defensively responsible people paired with him.
Yeah.
Because he can get beat on foot, which is not a problem if you've got someone who can back check well enough. And if you play him, like I think if you slot him in that vacated slot by DeBrincat, his point total should rebound a bit. So,
yeah, I think so. When Dorian talked to media after the trade, he mentioned that Kubalik could fit into their top six right now, but if they make another addition to the team at forward, that he could move down, like slide down to the top 9. But so it seemed like they were leaving that possibility open of him either starting on the second or third line, is what it sounds like. And if he starts on the third line, then he's going to be playing with Shane Pinto, who has been an effective defensive player for all of his college career. And at times this season, he, I think, faltered. But again, I think that whole line of DeBrincat, Pinto, and Batherson it didn't click like I think the team wanted. And so I think it was just, rather than them all being bad defensively, I think it was just kind of lack of chemistry is really it. And Batherson recovering from that leg injury, I don't think he could pivot as well. And so he was getting beat defensively sometimes, or his effort, people question. But anyway, all that to say, whether he plays on the second line or third line, I think that he could do some good things with some depth scoring for the Sens, because they struggled with that last year. All right. Well, on that note, after the break that's coming up, we'll talk about the prospect, Donovan Sabrango, who's also included that trade. We'll talk about whether Detroit's a playoff team. And then we'll touch on the budding rivalry that seems to be sprouting, at least on social media, between the two clubs. Hey, Sens fans, it's baseball season, and new customers who download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN can bet just $5 and score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelpline.ma.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700 on behalf of Boot Hill Casino Resort, Kansas. In West Virginia, gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. All games regulated by the West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly. In partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. 1 boost per eligible game. Opt-in required. Max bet $50. 10 plus leg required for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/baseball terms. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you're enjoying the show so far. If you are, please give us a subscription there on YouTube and make sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and now on Threads. All the links to those social media accounts can be found in our description. So as I mentioned earlier, Ottawa also received Ottawa-born left-handed defenseman Donovan Sabrango in the trade. Young prospect. He split time between the AHL and ECHL this year. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on him and what you think he brings to the table.
First of all, he looks like a hockey player. If you go on HockeyDB and you search him, that man is a hockey player or he's changing your oil. Those are the two things that he is going to do. But Donovan Sabrango was drafted, and I actually really liked him as a prospect. And he was one that it's okay because we have a huge glut of defensemen in our pipeline, and that's why it was okay to let him go. But he is a dude that's going to piss people off. I think he's a depth defenseman. He'd either be bottom pair or 7th D. And that's partly because if you saw that he went to the ECHL, he went and played for Toledo for 23 games. And that was kind of just to refine himself a little bit. So like you said, he's going home. So there may be that little, again, psychology piece there where he's back home. He's with his family. He's in a familiar area. That might boost his game a little bit. But by no means is he a slouch. He's not an offensive guy, but he's a dude that is going to be able to make pretty decent breakout passes. He's going to go to the corner. He's going to fight with people. He's going to get under people's skin, and he's just out there to piss people off. He's a decently sized dude, 6'1", 194. I have no issues with Donovan Sabrango as a prospect, and he was probably 5th or 6th on our defensive depth chart for as far as prospects go. Also, his dad is a Cuban soccer player. So if you follow Cuban soccer, Eduardo Sabrango is a Cuban soccer player.
That's kind of wild.
I was curious about that because Elite Prospects has the Canadian flag and the Cuban flag beside him. So I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah, but if you're lacking quality defensive prospects in your system, and I'm not sure. I think at last I checked, Athletic is your guys' pool like 25th ranked in the NHL.
Yeah, so
it's pretty covered bare.
Yeah, but I think it's a lot like that's due with a lot of prospects having graduated. I think Ottawa has the youngest or second youngest roster in the NHL. Yeah. But on the defensive depth chart, other than Tyler Clevin, I think Sabrango would probably be the top left-handed defensive prospect the Sens have. So I think it made sense. Like he'll definitely be a mainstay in Belleville this year.
So if you do what I think we're going to do is we're going to pair a highly offensive defenseman with a defensive defenseman. Sabrango would probably be your bottom pair defensive defenseman. If you can get one with a little more scoring ability on that pair, it'd be a great pair because he's, like I said, going to go dig out the pucks, knock people over, and create room.
Hey, I like it. That's a
Yeah.
new era Ottawa hockey, baby.
So we have the tough question that, every time you got to ask it. Do you see Detroit making the playoffs this year after this move?
Would it take Florida 92 points to make the playoffs this year? I could see it. So we were what at the break, we were like almost in a playoff position. And then at the trade deadline, we traded off Tyler Bertuzzi. Jacob Vrana went to the Blues. We lost I think one of the big things that's very underrated and what really affected us was Michael Rasmussen went down, broke his kneecap, and was out.
Yeah.
And he was, I mean, the dude's a force. He's your grinder. He's aggressive. He is a net front presence, good on the power play. He digs out pucks. He is developed very well. And I think losing him and losing that aggressiveness was part of the reason that we started to slip. And then trading Tyler Bertuzzi, that was some scoring, some assists that made us slip even further. So I think adding in DeBrincat, adding in JT Compher, bringing in a guy like Daniel Sprong, adding that depth scoring, and then if you look at our roster currently, any guy I think from the top to bottom could slot in one or two lines higher than where he probably should be, and the team's not going to suffer from it. So we really built the depth. We got the offense in. We shore up the defense with Justin Holl and Shane Gostisbehere. I think this can be a playoff team.
Yeah, they certainly have the depth. I think they needed to add another star. DeBrincat helps them there. Like you said, they could probably use another offensive firepower piece in the top six. I think Daniel Sprong has the potential to be that. I think he was a really underrated signing.
For sure.
I also really liked Christian Fischer as a signing, because I was, kind of tooting his horn and wanting Ottawa to go after him in free agency, both him and Sprong. So I think those are both savvy pickups by Yzerman. Being Sens fans, we dumped on Justin Holl a lot last year for being kind of trash. So hopefully he can
rebound. Hopefully he turns it around.
Yeah.
Are we sure it's not just the Toronto media and fans blowing absolutely everything out of proportion, that they have to find a scapegoat or else they can't go to sleep at night?
I mean, like
I have a buddy who's a very rational Leafs fan. That guy hates Justin Holl.
Oh. So Justin Holl's, his J-Fresh card's not bad either. I think what we're going to do, most likely, he'll play second pair right D and be there for defense with Shane Gostisbehere on the left for offense, who can pick up defensively if he needs to. Or if all else fails, we scratch Ben Sherratt. We put Justin Holl on the bottom pair with Oli Mata, and then he doesn't really have to do anything.
Yeah, I think one of the weird moves for me that Yzerman did last year, and I may be speaking out of turn because I don't really know Detroit, but I thought trading Filip Hronek was really weird.
So yeah, it was the most you were ever going to get for him. And you take that out. You take the first round pick, whether you can get it. If you can get the first round pick, you take the first round pick. The other half of it is Hronek's contract is going to be coming up. And the rumor floating around was he was going to want $7+ million a season.
Right.
And to be able to get rid of that and pick up a couple more contracts, to get Ghost for a year at like $4 million to replace Hronek, it's a win. And then we've got.
Because I thought Hronek was just a much better overall defenseman. I know Shane Gostisbehere had an awesome offensive season, but I was seeing Filip Hronek's player cards on The Athletic, and he was considered like a $9 million defenseman.
You were seeing last season Filip Hronek's player cards on The Athletic. Go back and look 2 seasons ago and 3 seasons ago. He had a rebound season last season. Okay. And that is why Vancouver paid so much money for him, or so many picks, because he had a rebound season. 2 seasons ago, he was one. If you go search at Grindline Pod, Filip Hronek, or just Hronek, you will see a lot of very angry tweets from 2 seasons ago. Okay. So, and then again, it comes back to the depth we have in the system. So we just drafted Axel Sandin Pellikka, perfect Filip Hronek replacement in 1 to 2 seasons from now.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I thought that was a
good
great pick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Greg, we have another question for you. And
Shoot.
with the lead up to this trade, and of course the trade itself going down, social media became a battleground
Oh
between
Lord.
Detroit Red Wings fans and Ottawa Senators fans. So, with last season, Kachuk with the whole "who wants it" thing, and the couple games that a lot of Sens fans see as like being the downfall of Detroit's season last year, and then Detroit fans come back with like, well, where's your Stanley Cup in the last dozen
100
years?
years.
Yeah.
Ever. Like
Well, hey, we got one in 1927. Okay, it hasn't been that long.
I don't
Different
think I know how many people are still alive that were born in 1927.
Greg, we don't talk about that. Okay.
Oh, I would imagine like quite a few.
They're getting up there though.
Yeah. They're less than 100, but I did like you could ask them, hey, where were you when the Ottawa Senators won the cup? And they're like, in my nursery.
They'll say the who?
Or you'll say the Ottawa Senators, the hockey team, or the
Yeah.
Ottawa Senators, who were the baseball team in Ottawa at one point.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, okay. Anyway,
So you're gonna ask me if we're angry at each other? Is that
No,
are we
so
gonna fight?
I'm asking, is this like it's just mom and dad having a fight, or is this like a budding rivalry that you think is really starting to take shape here?
So half of it's a bunch of loud people online that don't know how to calm down. Because remember, you guys were supposed to get Lucas Raymond, Mo Sider, and 5 first-round picks for Alex DeBrincat, right?
Okay, wait.
What everyone's
To be
saying.
fair,
We were?
I think the people who were talking about that were totally trolling, because I think anybody who was posing realistic trade scenarios were like Kubelik and like a draft pick and a prospect or stuff like that. I don't think anyone legitimately thought we'd
a
be
lot
getting.
of people wanted Berggren. That was one that a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
floating Joe Veleno because I totally
Yeah.
thought Joe Veleno was going to be part of the trade package.
Yeah. I think Veleno, Soderblom was one people were hoping for, and Berggren. I think those were the three where like people were legitimately hoping that a trade was like.
I saw Mazer too.
Yes.
Yeah. I had some good back and forths with some Sens fans that were very rational about the trade and weren't angry at all. And then there were people today that were trying to compare Drake Batherson to Moritz Seider. And then there was another one that said Moritz Seider would be on your bottom pair right D with your current roster. And I'm like, you guys are insane. But as far as like a rivalry goes, yeah, I know, right? The shocked look explains everything because
those are some takes.
Mo Sider
well,
would
to be
definitely
fair, though, like it's 100% trolling, because I saw somebody who said like they wouldn't trade Adam Ernie in a second for Stützle. Like
Jesus. No, we have our fair share of dumb fans online, but
yeah,
as far
every
as
fan base does.
Yeah, and some more than others. That's why I won't talk to Montreal fans. But it's as far as a rivalry goes, I think that give it a couple years and we're on the same kind of development path as long as Dorian keeps doing what he's doing. If you stock up your prospects, you get more draft picks, you get some more into the system, and you can build. Because what Steve Yzerman's trying to do is what he did in Tampa: build a long-term perennial Stanley Cup playoff team. And if your team does the same thing, Boston will slip, Toronto will slip if they haven't slipped already. No one knows what they're doing. But Boston will slip down, Toronto will slip down, Florida will slip down, and it'll be us. And then Montreal might eventually become a middle of the pack team. But we'll be toward the top. And the teams at the top are always the ones that are kind of have the rivalries. We play each other more. We're in the same division. If Brady Tkachuk doesn't settle down, he might lose some more hair. That's my only thing. But I think that, it's got all the makings of a rivalry, right?
Yeah.
Like good two teams that are on the same path at the same time with about the same contention window. And we're both developing like fight. Like we've got dudes on the team that are going to go hard, that are going to get each other angry, get under the skin.
Yeah.
And I think it's good. It's healthy competition. We can be friendly about it. We don't have to be insane. But I think there's definitely a rivalry coming.
I think there's it's rough because not only are the two teams, the Sens and the Red Wings doing this, but the Sabres are doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And what I hate about the Sabres is that their prospect pool as it stands right now is gross. It is so
Yeah.
good. And like they've got all these really talented players as is right now. And they just got to like casually add Zach Benson this draft and Matthew Savoy last draft. And like, I'm just like, guys, how long have you been rebuilding? Like,
They're a team that's in perpetual rebuild. So I
I
think the
want
Athletic,
Buffalo to make the playoffs though, because they deserve it. Like they've been at that point. I feel bad for their fans. Like they got to do it. They got to do
yeah.
it.
So we are ranked. The Red Wings are ranked by the Athletic number 5th prospect pool in hockey
Yeah.
as of this last season. Buffalo is ranked number 6. Now Buffalo could jump depending on how they rank Sandin Pelika. We made a really weird decision taking Brady Cleveland in the 2nd round for some reason with one of our picks because we had 3 of them.
Yeah.
So I think that you're right. Buffalo should be awesome.
Yeah.
It's just that Buffalo, I think depth is their issue and has been their issue because you can make like any other team, you can make a really great line.
Yeah.
And that really great line doesn't play 60 minutes. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I think Buffalo is at that point. Like I think Devin Levi is going to be a stud. I just don't know if he's going to be a stud next year. And you know what? Like I know that Winnipeg wants to get rid of Hellebuck, and like Buffalo should be the team to go get him. And I would just offer them something because he's going to walk to free agency and go. So if they just offered him a first and said, this is all you're going to get, and that's it. And like, I would just be super aggressive with that. And I think Buffalo getting a goalie, I don't also realize that Hellebuck is not worth just a 1st round pick.
Yeah.
But the market for him is dwindling.
It is. And his supposed contract demands kind of scary.
Rough.
So like anytime you want to give that much term to a goalie, especially with how voodoo goalies can be and how easily they can get injured.
Yeah.
I have a really hard time giving anything more than like a 5-year contract to a goalie.
Yeah, and I think that's completely reasonable. But, you know, it's kind of cool that the Red Wings, the Sabres, and the Sens are all on this like same trajectory. And we all can be like piss babies towards each other because, you know, that's the fun, right?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And I think you look at other teams in the Atlantic, like I know everyone says every year, you know, Boston's aging, you know, they're going to fall off. And last year we saw that was not true, even though a lot of people thought it would be. But, you know, Boston, Tampa, Toronto, eventually, I think with Toronto, it'll just be salary that takes them downhill. Like, I mean, John Tavares, I think, still has like 3 or 4 years left, and that's an $11 million cap hit. Who knows how much Matthews is going to ask for in his next contract? Probably more than McKinnon and McDavid.
15.
It'll be 13 or 14 million. Yeah.
And then, you know, Marner's already getting over 10 million. Nylander now is likely going to have to be moved out because they can't afford his next contract. So, you know, with teams like that, I think starting to slip, we saw Pittsburgh miss the playoffs for the first time in a long time this year. I think it really leaves the door open for teams like Ottawa and Detroit and Buffalo to really kind of move into those spots. And I think this year for Detroit and Ottawa, I think wild card is probably the expectation. I know for Ottawa, it's like if Ottawa doesn't make the playoffs, like heads got to roll because it's time. It's been 6 years, which I think has been the longest playoff drought in Sens history. And so I think that probably also adds to some of the frustrations we see online. Yeah. I think a lot of Sens fans, it's just like there's also been like a lot of off ice issues, you know, dating back to the previous owner and other situations. So I think Sens fans generally, the feeling is like we don't want to be like a joke to other teams. We want to be a laughing stock. We don't want Habs and Leafs fans to be able to, you know, punch down on us anymore. I think that's kind of it. So even though Ottawa isn't a huge fan base, they're very passionate. And I think whenever somebody, any fan from another team on social media that has a bit of a following, you know, kind of comes at the Sens fan base, all of a sudden, all of a sudden it just like sparks something. And I can't remember, it wasn't you guys, it was another podcast.
Was it another
geez.
Detroit Red Wings podcast? Because I
There was like
remember
yeah.
like we
of
were
us.
Yeah, no,
we were
it
getting
was.
into it like with one of them during the 2 game stint. Not us personally, I think,
No,
but
no.
they
The just
were they were
yeah.
like
I think
it
it was
was
the
funny.
I think it was the Locked On Red Wings podcast. I think so. But anyway, I ended up
Scotty
like
and Brian, good guys.
but I think I ended up like DMing them and I was like, dude, how you guys feeling right now? And they were just like, man, we did not expect this response.
Not so great.
Yeah. So
We Sen's Twitter has a lot of infighting, but as soon as you like kick our little brother,
yeah.
everybody like the cousins and everybody starts showing up. It's
Yeah, you guys are
hilarious.
like the 12 Arizona Coyotes fans that we always fight with because there are
Hey,
literally only 12 of them.
if
So
you see Richie Flores out there, like that guy is a ride or die
Yeah.
for Arizona. And shout outs to Richie Flores on the Arizona
I
podcast
think
that
it's
is on the
the
Hockey Podcast Network.
Richie and Corey show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, they're gonna become a Houston Arrows podcast here pretty soon.
I
Damn.
feel
You're doing
feel
him
bad
dirty
for them.
You're doing him
Like,
dirty.
You know, it's not good there.
Not good.
But anyway, it's been great chatting with you. I'm sure we
Yeah,
could
man, it's
talk hockey
awesome.
all night. But if there's anything you want to plug before we end the show tonight, be my guest.
Yeah, man. We're like I said, the Grindline Podcast at Grindline Pod on all of our social media. We're on Threads as well for whatever that's worth currently. You can sub to us on YouTube too. We put out episodes weekly. If there's big news, I do little 5-minute videos in between. But yeah, you can find us at Grindline Pod, and I'm at Bringing the Wing. Ryan's at RD Ryan 33, and Tyler's at Seal Dog 91.
Cool. Well, yeah,
Wicked.
thank you so much for joining us. Always love talking hockey with other hockey podcasts. So appreciate you lending your time to us tonight.
Yeah, we'll have to catch back up in mid-season to see how each person's doing again.
Yeah, and seep our hatred into one another.
It's a good venting. Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Greg, and have a good night.
Thanks for coming on, Greg.
Yeah, bye-bye.